Okay, we've got the amp turned around again, and we're ready to do an actual live walkthrough with the bass connected. So, got the bass already set up. One thing I should mention about setting up your bass, maybe a good place to start when you're first using this amplifier, first getting used to the controls and getting used to how this sounds. What I would recommend is set your tone controls just center detent. Don't go crazy on your bass amp. You might be used to a particular sound and maybe you have the bass turned way up on your tone controls and things like that. I would recommend just set them center, set them neutral for now until you get used to this bass amp and get used to how it sounds, because it's going to change your sound, probably make it better. And you might find that you need a whole lot less tone control than you thought you did at one point. Another thing I'd recommend is once you're plugged in, turn the volume control up to at least between 8 and 10. So 10 being all the way up, 0 being all the way down. Turn the volume control up between 8 and 10. If you're the type of bass player that likes to adjust your volume control a little bit, that still gives you a little bit of room to make some adjustments as needed. But if you're the type of bass player that really doesn't touch the volume control at all, then just turn it all the way up to 10. And then we can get set up here with our level controls. That's going to give the audio technicians a really great, strong signal for them to work with. Okay, so here we go with the amplifier itself. I've got my tone control set neutral, and I've got the volume control set all the way up. I don't know if you're going to be able to see here. Let's just turn around so that I'm not in your way. So we're going to start off with just, you're plugged in, you're ready to go. First thing you're going to do is make sure the volume, the power's on, and then just begin to turn the level up. I would start with say something around 3. Just start with that. Okay? For our purposes, I'm going to just back it off a little bit. It might be a little bit loud. Okay? Okay, so we've set up a level control that's nice and comfortable for us. So the next thing we're going to do is, when I was playing, if you noticed, just how much volume difference there was between some of those notes. Every bass guitar is going to, especially the less expensive ones, are going to have a great dynamic range. So some notes are going to sound a lot softer than others. And what we want to do is we want to balance that out. And we can do that with compression. So I'm going to set up the compressor. So as you heard, when I hit the G note down here, it wasn't that loud. But when I went up here to a high E, I got a whole lot more sustain and a whole lot more volume out of that note. So what I want to do is I want to use the compressor to kind of balance that out, also to get me a little more punch, a little more tightness out of my bass sound. So what I'm going to do is maybe just start with something really, really light. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this on this video or not, but we'll give it a go. So I'm going to bring the compressor up to 3. And let's do the same thing. Now, if you were able to hear that on the video, no matter where I moved on the neck of the bass, no matter which notes I was playing, no matter how fast I was playing those notes, the compressor, you could see the blue light going on. The compressor was actually containing that sound. It was raising up the volume of the quieter notes, and it was squashing down the volume of the louder notes. And that gives a much punchier, tighter, controlled sound that's going to sound so much better in the mix. Now, if you're a really controlled player, you can back off on the compressor. So maybe you've got a really light touch. Maybe you've got a really great instrument. You don't need maybe as much compression. But, if you are a really, really dynamic player, then you might need a little more compression. So, let's jack it up to 5. Let's see how it sounds. Okay, so if you notice there, that was really, really evening out the tone. And once you've done that, once you've got some compression, you might find you have to bring the volume up a little bit as well. And that's okay, you can do that. So anyway, for our purposes, we're just going to bring the compressor back to about 3, and we'll start with there. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to set up the shape control. This is going to give me instant EQ without even touching the 7-band EQ or even the 2-band EQ. I can sort of instantly apply an EQ curve that the engineers at Hartke, probably did a lot of research on this to find out what makes a great sounding bass. And they came up with a shape control that's automatically going to apply kind of a standard EQ curve to the bass guitar. And then it's going to allow you to control the mid frequencies a little bit more, the lower and the mid frequency range. So I'm going to just engage the shape control. You can see the light comes on. And now what I've done is I've applied some EQ to the bass as well. Now if you notice the sound, if you can hear that, the sound is a lot warmer than it was before. Here it is with the shape off. Okay, and with the shape back on. Okay, so a lot warmer. Now what I'm going to do is just sweep through some of these frequency range. So what this is going to do is it's going to cut some of these mid, low mid, and even low frequencies down as low as 80 hertz. So if I want to roll out a little bit of, say, 145, this is maybe what it sounds like. Okay, without the shape control, and with the shape control. Now if I go to 320, I'm going to roll out a bit of 320, but I'm going to leave 145 intact. Okay, again, up in 770. Now I'm taking out some higher mid-frequencies or mid-frequency range. Okay, so you can see it's leaving a lot of the really lower bass, the thicker bass, the low mid information. It's leaving that intact. It's taking out some of the higher frequencies. I think probably the best use of the shape control is in eliminating some of the lower mid frequencies that muddy up the bass. One of the problems we have here at HHAC is that the bass just overshadows everything in the mix. And when it does that, it's usually doing that in the low mid frequencies, generally in around 200 to 400. So if you sweep a little bit of that out, it's actually going to clarify the mix for the front of house guys. You audio technicians, this is instant EQ for you guys. So when you're back there at the board, this is going to solve a lot of your problems. If you can find the low mid frequency that's causing the bass to mask a lot of the other instruments like your guitars, your vocals, your keyboards, this is powerful. So just experiment with that. Usually in between the ranges of 200 and 400 will give. So I haven't lost any of that bass information. It's still a nice, warm, punchy sounding bass. But what I've done go back a little bit. Not like that. And it doesn't take much. Boy, that control is really, really sensitive. You just move it just a little bit and it really changes the tone of the bass. And remember, I haven't touched anything on the bass guitar yet. This is the only thing on this amplifier circuit right now that I'm actually doing as far as EQ goes. Okay, so you can experiment with that. Pretty powerful. Okay, so the next thing over, I'm actually just going to skip over to the other side since we're talking about EQ. I'm going to go to the 2-band EQ. So I've got now a sound that's kind of what I was looking for, but I want to tailor that up a little bit more. I want to put some high frequency information back into the bass. So I'm just going to take that and I'm just going to roll maybe about 3 dB of high frequency information. And let's see what that sounds like. Okay, so what it did, right, gave me a little bit more brightness. You can hear a bit more string noise, but not terrible. And just a reminder, I haven't even got the horn turned on yet. So this is just with these 210 drivers running. So I've added a little bit of treble. Just to give you an example, I probably wouldn't do this, but just to give you a little bit of example, let's just roll, say, 3 dB off, or maybe this might be a little more like 6 dB off on the bass controls, and let's see what that sounds like. Okay, so that definitely got rid of some of the lower, warmer frequencies. Demuddified it a little bit too. So if you're finding that the bass is a little bit too muddy, just maybe take a little bit out. Okay, so that's there. The 7-band EQ, this is when we can get really, really microscopic about our sound. So if you really want to do some tweaking to your overall sound, this is the place to do it. Start here first, go here next, and if you're still not getting the sound you're looking for, then it's time to move in here and get down to the microscopic level. Okay? I generally like, for a modern kind of bass sound, a rock bass sound, we want it nice and fat, but we want it to cut a little bit too. We've got to get it cutting through the mix. So one way you can do that is add a little bit of mid-frequency information. Okay, so I'm going to add maybe a little bit of 630 hertz and a little bit of 1.2K. Not much. You see, I didn't move the controls all that much, but just enough. And let's see what that sounds like. Okay, so that gave me a little bit more articulation. That's the word I like to use for that kind of sound. Articulation, definition. When you just have a lot of bass information, it sounds warm and it sounds fat, sure. And when you add the treble controls in, you're getting a lot of brightness. But somewhere in the middle, that articulation, that definition of the instrument is happening right here on the 7-band EQ. And it doesn't take much. A little bit of 630, a little bit of 1.2, and wham, there you go. Audio engineers, if you really need to tailor the sound up of the bass guitar, you're not getting exactly what you're looking for, you can do that right here. So let's just get a little more extreme and see what that sounds like. So I'm going to jack up 1.2, 630 a bit more, accentuate those frequencies. Okay, so now I'm really articulate. I'm getting a very, very defined, mid-rangey sound. Why would I do that? It cuts through the mix. It sits well in the mix. Okay? You may not need to use that much, though. So this is where, between the audio engineer and the bass guitar player, you guys are going to be able to tailor up a sound that sounds great for the bass guitar player and sounds great out in the front of house mix. And guys, you do need to work together, okay? It's not just about me. Audio engineers, it's not just about you, and bass players, it's not just about you. This is a team effort. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create a great sound and a great worship experience for everybody that comes on Sunday mornings. Okay, so that pretty much takes care of EQ. The last thing I want to show you is the overdrive section. This is the section you probably won't use quite as much as the others, but you might want to experiment a little bit with it. It's got a tube overdrive circuit in it. So what this is going to do, as I mentioned before, is it's going to add a little bit of overdrive. And that overdrive, you won't hear it a lot when you're just setting the controls very, very minimally, you'll hear it when you start to jack those controls all the way up to the top. Then you're going to start getting kind of an overdriven fuzz tone to the bass guitar. And it's going to sound pretty growly and pretty intense. And that's great for aggressive, rock or metal styles. But for a worship style, you know what? Just a little bit of this overdrive can actually add a really, really nice tone to the bass guitar. So here's the sound of the bass guitar without the overdrive circuit. Okay, and then with the overdrive circuit, I turn it on, add some harmonics in. Again, this is how much overdrive I'm adding. So when you see this word harmonics, don't let you throw it off. Let it throw you off, rather. This is just how much of the tube overdrive circuit we're adding. And then the next is the brightness control. How bright, how much more high information do I want to add into the tube overdrive circuit? And then finally, how much do I want in the mix? So I'm just going to go right to 50% right away, and I've got harmonics set at 2.5. Let's maybe bring it to 3, and then the brightness control I've set at about 3.5. Now that's just a nice kind of even place to start. Let's see what that's done to our overall sound. Okay, that's fattened it up quite a bit. Probably a little bit too much for my taste, so I'm going to drop the mix back a little bit. I'm going to bring the brightness up, and let's see what that does. That's just added just a little bit of overdrive into my sound, and I think it sounds pretty darn good. So that, guys, is the introduction to the front face controls. One last thing I want to do is just reach in behind here, and I'm going to turn the horn on. So now I've got the horn switched on, and this is going to add a lot more brightness to my tone. Okay, so you notice that's really added a lot more of the upper frequencies, and it's given me a lot more brightness and a bit more string noise as well. If you don't like that string noise, you can just reach behind and attenuate the horn by 6 dB by switching it into the minus 6 dB slot. If you don't like the horn at all, you can just turn it right off. But I think it's an advantage, maybe just start with the horn in the minus 6 dB setting. I think that's a nice balance. So that's a pretty nice bass tone to start with. That's going to give you a really, really, I think, popular rock style sound, and something that's going to sit really well in the mix for the kind of music we do here at HHAC. And that's, guys, is an introduction to the front face controls, a little bit of a walkthrough, maybe in the wrap up here, just saying that I think it's worth, if you're still unfamiliar after going through this video walkthrough, you're still unfamiliar, you're still uncomfortable with this, try it out. Before your next rotation on the worship team, see if, talk to Alex and see if you can get in here and try the bass amp out. Kick the tires a little bit. Become familiar with it before you show up on Sunday. Because the last thing you want to do is get in here on a Sunday and become frustrated because you're using a piece of kit that you just don't know what you're doing. So watch this video, watch it again and again and again until you're familiar with it. Come in, try it out before you get on your next rotation. If you're the type of person that really needs to know stuff, there's a manual available online. And you can check out the manual. It's not a difficult read, and it'll give you some sample settings on how to set this amp up for the particular type of tone or style of music that you like to play. And then finally, one last thing, let me dive out of the shot here for a second. What we have here is a little card that Hartke sent along with the amplifier, and that's just going to give us some basic settings. So at the top here we have a modern, what they call a modern rock setting, and you can see that they've set the level about 3, the compressor about 5. They've turned the shape control on and set it to 320. They've turned on the overdrive circuit as well, and they've made it pretty aggressive. And then they've brightened up the sound with a little bit of treble, and they haven't done anything with the 7-band EQ at all. I would probably go a little more moderate, especially on the overdrive, and maybe look at the shape control starting in at about 200 to start with. But this will give you a basic place to start if you don't know how to set these controls up. You can start with this little card. It'll be sitting on the top of the amp at all times. If it's not there, talk to one of the sound guys, and I'm sure it will be in the sound booth. So other than that, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this training video and walk through the Hartke Hydrive 2x10. If you have any questions, you can talk with Alex, or you can talk to me, and be glad to clarify anything for you. That's it. So thanks again, and have fun with the Hartke Hydrive.